Welcome to Eyes and Teeth, the specials, and this is the tribute to the wonderful Mr. Paul Daniels. When I think of variety as a kid, the Paul Daniels Magic Show was at the top on the BBC. My family and I would watch speciality acts and magicians, ventriloquists, but Paul Daniels was mesmerising with his magic and patter. We had never seen that before. Knowing what I know now, there may have never been the likes of Ronn Lucas, Fred Roby, Senior Wences, Willie Tyler over here in the UK if it wasn't for Paul Daniels and his magic show and producer John Fisher. One particular children's TV show I do remember was Whizbit in my teens.
Ostakazoozalem, that was the magic word. Ostakazoozalem, my oh my. He can do magic, 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 magic a rabbit, 8 feet high. Ha ha, this away, ha ha, that away, ha ha, this away, my oh my. Ha ha, this away, ha ha, that away, ha ha, this away, my oh my.
I then became a proud owner of the Paul Daniels magic set. And when I performed my first public show in school assembly in 1988, I dug out the magic set to add a trick to my opening. You can hear how that went later on. These specials are dedicated to a handful of entertainers I've admired and worked with. In episode 1, beginning with Dave Evans, followed by Roy Hudd, OBE and Keith Harris. I worked on a touring pantomime in 2014 with Paul Daniels and Debbie McGee, and I could not have been more excited to be sharing the stage and social moments with these greats of variety. In this episode, there are anecdotes and interviews with some incredibly talented guests, including magician Richard Griffin and his former assistant of magic and slick costume changer Hayley Jane, plus Ronn Lucas, Joe Pasquale, my very own Nina, amongst others, as well as an in-depth conversation with the producer of the Paul Daniels Magic Show, author John Fisher. Welcome to Eyes and Teeth, the specials, when we enjoy the life and times of Paul Daniels.
Eyes and Teeth.
Dealing with Daniels, and to conjure it all up for you is the man himself, Paul Daniels.
How, you may ask, can 4 people play cards on a radio show? I'll try to tell you. I'm using a short pack, having discarded all the 2s, the 3s, the 4s, the 5s, and the 6s. And I'm the only one who can see the pack because each card's got a question on it. Now, the club cards are pot-luck questions. Hearts are near to everyone's heart. It's all about food and drink. On every spade is a bit of a verse, and the player has to sing a bit of the chorus. Note that, players. Sing. Diamonds are murder, literally. They're all questions about murder. The inventor, Ian Messiter, not a million miles away from my left elbow, says that part of the object of the game is to confuse the players. And it's confusing me. Now, they can't remember which cards are being called. There are 3 players and 4 suits, which have to be called in strict...
And here's your host for Every Second Counts, Paul Daniels.
Feel good tonight. Good audience and hello to you at home. Welcome to Every Second Counts, the show where couples play to win seconds of time, and they hope that'll help them to win fabulous prizes later on. And so do we. The show is all about time. And at the beginning, we always tell you something from a long time ago, like exactly 200 years ago this week, the mutiny on the Bounty took place. 3 sailors fell off a chocolate bar. I mean, you don't believe that, do you? Oh, right then. While that bar is melting, we will meet the contestants.
And our first Every Second Counts couple tonight.
Now you're gonna like this, gonna like it.
Not a lot, not a lot.
You're gonna be delighted, get excited.
Maybe, but not a lot.
You're gonna see a whole lot of magic. Look at this trick and that trick. And when he says it's not a lot, you'll agree it's such a lot. Meet the man who excels, Paul Daniels.
Welcome to the Magic Show. And in this magic show, of course, there's not only going to be me doing magic, we're going to have magical performers as well. Guest magicians from all over the world, specialists in particular fields, unusual fields, and we're going to show you some party tricks, everything. The one thing that you will not see in this show is a camera trick.
your host on Wipeout, Paul Daniels.
I give the answers, now players have to tell me if they're right answers or they're wrong answers. Right ones put money in the bank. Wrong wipes it out again. There's cash and there's mystery prizes on the way to somebody going for the big one. One of our super holidays.
Paul Daniels and John Fisher worked real magic to introduce the best in variety onto our TV screens. For me, though, as a budding ventriloquist, all I wanted to see was more ventriloquists. And this show would not disappoint. From Willie Tyler, Albert Savine, Senior Wences, George Slick, Fred Roby, the list went on.
I'm totally aware that you've seen ventriloquists on magic shows before, but I guarantee you've never seen one more attractive than my next guest. With Lamb Chop, it's Shari Lewis.
I thank you very much. And now Lamb Chop and I are going to sing What?
What?
What'd you say?
I said,
What do you mean,
I'm not going to sing. I just came out here to say hello.
Hello.
We have brought over the years from all over the world the greatest ventriloquists and probably missed the fact that we had a damn great one at home. Will you please welcome, of course, with Lord Charles, Mr. Ray Allen.
Of course, one of the greatest ventriloquist spots, and in my top 3 ever seen on British television, was when Paul Daniels hosted one of the greatest I'd ever seen direct from America.
Next guest comes from America and, according to the New York Times, is the world's best ventriloquist. We shall find out as I introduce to you the talent of Ronn Lucas.
T for two. Isn't that a great piece of music for a ventriloquist? Yeah? Yeah. Lady, this is a kazoo. I thought I'd join them. Ladies and gentlemen.
He talked somebody into getting me over there. I did Bob Monkhouse first, but I didn't meet John then. At least I don't think I did. And then I went on to do Paul Daniels, a little bit of Des O'Connor, rest his soul, and then went on to do Paul Daniels, and it was a great fit. Paul was funny. He was helpful. He was very critical of my work, and I loved it.
Yes.
Because he just made me better.
I once bumped into Paul Daniels in the car park, and he was opening a fete. He was in Eastbourne, and
you didn't knock him down or anything.
we were both walking, but I'd never met him before, and I had to stop him, and I just asked him one question: who is your favourite ventriloquist? And he said, without doubt, Ray Allen and Ronn Lucas. He says, I have to say too. And this was probably about 15 years ago, but
I'm glad that was an order of importance. I think that makes perfect sense to me. I'll tell you, we had, when I did the Ron Lucas show for Tim's TV, we had Ray Allen on the show.
You did. I remember I remember him being on. You were reading newspapers. I remember.
That's correct.
Oh, it was.
And it started with a conversation with John. You know, he said, "Well, we can't have a ventriloquist on here because you're the best." And I said, "Well, John, come on." I told him the story about Jack Benny, an American comic who always had the funniest people on his shows. And someone ever asked if he was threatened. They said no, because next week they're gone and it's still my show.
It's true. Wow.
And so I said, John, I don't know Ray Allen. You would know him. Let's try to get him on the show. And it developed. And so what was it you remembered about the bench?
Yeah, you were both sat on the bench, and I think the characters were behind the newspapers, weren't they? And
I got to get a visual on this. This was difficult too because I think I had to switch hands with Scorch.
Yes.
What happened was we had written a script and submitted it to Ray Allen. He didn't care for it, and he countered with, like, how about if we just kind of, basically me and Lord Charles, well, how about if just Lord Charles does a monologue? He's supposed to be tipsy and drunk all the time. And that's kind of what happened. Both me and Ray were behind newspapers. And there were 4 sets of newspapers, and the two closest together dropped, and it was Lord Charles' suddenly looking over at Scorch and going, okay, that's it. It's time for me to quit drinking.
It was brilliant for the two characters to.
And I only had like one or two words to Scorch. I said, what do you mean? And then he just went into this whole comedy monologue about, seeing large flying grasshoppers and stuff like that. And towards the end of it, when it sort of got to a point where it seemed out of hand, both Ray and I would drop our papers and kind of wink at each other and grab our puppets and walk off in opposite directions.
But, you had all these shows, the Bob Monkhouse show, Des O'Connor, Bruce Forsyth, Jimmy Tarbuck, all of these shows had you on as a guest. And then you came over and John Fisher got you the Hippodrome show was the first one that you did, wasn't it, Ron?
I forgot about that, yes. That was only 6 episodes, right?
I believe so, yeah. 6 episodes. And then you came back to do the Ron Lucas show for 4 years.
Right. They had done I was one of actually 3 hosts on the Hippodrome show. I think John pushed me to be the main host, but there were 2 other hosts that were on the show. And they did a demographic study. They sat me down and said, according to our demographic study, Mr. Lucas, your range of people who watch you is from the age of 2 to bifocals.
Yeah, everybody.
And I said, where is this going? I said, we'd like you to actually just host your own show under your own name, And I said, couldn't we call it something clever like watch this show where the puppy
dies? that would work these days. These reality shows.
I was way ahead of my time. Actually, we were trying to find a set. We actually thought about it. Large discussions. I thought, why does it have to be in a studio? Why couldn't it be like in a setting, indoor setting that looks like an outdoor caravan park?
No, right. Yeah, that'd be nice.
Every now and then you walk over to somebody's trailer, you knock on the door, and out walks some major star.
Oh, that's fun. Did they not go with that? They obviously didn't go with that.
They didn't want to take the risk.
Okay.
So I ended up looking like all the other variety shows where I opened by walking down a set of stairs.
But you know what, Ron? You say just like all the other variety shows, but no ventriloquist has ever hosted a variety show like you did in that time. It was wonderful to see a ventriloquist do that. That they say that ventriloquist didn't top the bill. There was never a ventriloquist really that topped the bill. There was only 1 or 2 that did. But you were the first ventriloquist, and I believe the last, to actually host a variety show in the UK, which, that's an accolade to...
That's wonderful, Steve. I had it and I killed it. Thank you so much.
just you to turn that into that. I'm still that 12-year-old boy there. Yeah.
John was the controlling person behind all of that, and he was just amazing to work with because he knew every variety act in the world. He was able to get them on the show. He was the one who had faith in me when no one else did to say, look, a ventriloquist can host a show. It's going to work fine. And I think maybe the Hippodrome show was kind of a test for that.
He had the passion. He really believed in you, and it was. For me, it was the first time I witnessed these bright new characters and more skills from a ventriloquist, from the talking sock to Buffalo Billy, the distant voice tricks, the raps with Scorch. You introduced me to so much in the Vent Act, and it just made it popular again. You made me really popular in the school playground because, after the Ron Lucas show was on, the next day, everyone would come up to me because they knew I was a learning ventriloquist and say, "Did you see him last night? Did you see the Ron Lucas show?" And it was just such a great family variety show. And like you say, 2-year-olds to bifocals watched it. I sat and watched it with my nan and granddad. They were so proud because within a few weeks, I went up to the studios and I met you, and I told everyone in school that I met you. It was just a dream come true at that time.
Well, that was all due to Jeff Felix.
Yeah, Jeff Felix.
How did you know Jeff?
Jeff made my first ventriloquist dummy, and he was one of the first people. Yeah, he was one of the first people I wrote to, and he gave me all the advice that I needed. Since I was 13 years old, he's been such a great help to me over the years.
He's just an all-around good guy. I needed an assistant. When I told John Fisher I'm going to need someone who understands ventriloquism and also understands the camera. And he says, I've got a few people for you. And I interviewed Jeff, and the moment Jeff walked in, he had worked for the Muppets. He'd done a couple of Muppet things out of the UK. And then he started talking about ventriloquism, and he was telling me things about ventriloquism. I thought, I don't even know this stuff. he was talking about glottal control and all. I go, I need to hire this guy just to increase my awareness of what I'm doing. and he had such a dry sense of humor. He was so much fun to work with. I think he also contributed to some of the writing, too.
Well, he's certainly an encyclopedia, isn't he, of our art, which is...
He certainly is.
Yeah, everybody went to Jeff.
We used him every way we could. I mean, he was there for every show, of course. But I mean, I would have endings where, Scorch and I might finish with a song, and the camera would pull back, and all the puppets are behind the bar, and they're all waving, and that would be Jeff as one of the people behind there, giving it effects. I was working on remote control stuff, and Jeff quickly picked it up, and when I had a Scorch with remote control moving eyes and everything, Jeff was the one who operated that.
You say about killing it, you never killed it. What it was, I think, is that they couldn't follow it. They couldn't follow the show that you brought to us. It was fantastic. And the people that you had on there, like people, just variety acts like George Carl, Ray Allen. You had Whitney Houston and Liza Minnelli. It had huge stars on the show.
Massive stars. Again, I had no pull. I had no say-so. I didn't book them. I'm so proud to be associated with that show. But that was all John Fisher. That was all John Fisher's doing.
Yeah, such a great memory for me.
And honestly, I think he'd probably be chagrined if I said that, because it was always, no. You tell people that you wrote every bit, you designed. And I said, no, I can't do that. That's not me. So I'd do interviews, and they'd say, well, you write the most amazing material. I said, well, I have writers, and they speed up the creative process, because I'll come up with an idea, and I'll have a beginning and middle and maybe no end, or I'll have a beginning and an end and maybe no middle. And then I'll start working with the writers, and it wasn't a writing process of sitting around and just talking. I would be performing in front of them and a mirror behind them and say, now I'm going to do this and this. Where do I go from there? So basically, I was still being creative, but having an audience that could respond and be fast and be funny.
Yes.
2 or 3 guys made the process go really, really fast. So I was telling John, I want to tell people about this. This is unique. This is different. This is fun.
Here is Ronn Lucas on one of our UK radio interviews for our UK tour 2016 Double Talk with BBC Berkshire host Debbie McGee talking to Ron about Paul and Debbie's honeymoon.
So then you and Paul were talking, and he was telling you that we were a part of our honeymoon because it was 5 weeks.
I digress. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
So I had just bought a new flat in Las Vegas. I said, I want you guys to stay there if you want to get away from the Strip. It's up to you guys, and you did. So I was on tour, and I left you folks the keys, and I had stocked the flat with liquor. I had stocked the flat with food, instant things, frozen food, all the music I could think of, and I made a big deal, I think, out of the fact that I tried to provide everything that you folks would even want to need. And when I got home, I found a little note on my bed signed Paul Daniels, and it said, wonderful flat, thank you for the stay, but we couldn't find the adult videos.
Sounds like him. Yeah, so since then on, of course, we've all been friends. I'm with Mary because Ron's wife used to be an ice skater.
That's right, she still is.
Yeah, and still teaches and everything, doesn't she? So and we've met up with you over the years a lot.
My name is Paul Daniels, and they call me an unusualist. Not because I'm unusual, so get that gleam out your eye, fella. It's because I collect the unusual. I collect something that nobody else can be bothered with. It's only me, stupid enough. You see, I have noticed that in England, all the posh people, the ones who talk like that, them with grapes on the sideboard when there's nobody sick, them. What they do is they pick a pack of cards up and they're in a rut. They're in a rut. They pick them up and they shuffle them like that. It's called the English overhand shuffle. Frightfully nice, frightfully. Did you know we're the only people in the world that shuffle cards like that? Russians don't. The Russians pick a pack of cards up and they do a thing called the Russian shuffle, like that. It's called the Russian shuffle because the cards are Russian, one after the other. And you get them in Canada where they do the Niagara Falls shuffle. That's straightforward.
I'd like to introduce you to some special interviews now from some well-respected members of the magic community to talk about Paul and his influence on them, starting with Richard and Hayley Griffin and, strangely, Nina Hewlett of Wisbech. Welcome back to Eyes and Teeth, the specials. And this is very, very live. I'm not going to tell you where we are because they told me not to tell you. So we're in the Lava Lounge. This Lava Lounge is an incredible wonderment of magic and mystery. It's not mystery. We know where it is. It's in Wisbech. They told me not to tell you. I'm welcoming here now to talk about the wonderful Paul Daniels, Hayley and Richard Griffin, magic extraordinaires. Hayley, Richard, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hey, you alright?
How you doing?
Good, thanks.
It's always wonderful to come to see you. You've got a magic museum here, Richard. Hayley, how long did it take for you to put up with him building this wonderful museum?
Well,
It's a bar, isn't it?
Yeah, so what we've done, we have a little magic bar, which used to be our garage that housed all of our flight cases when we were doing Big Illusions. And then once we finished doing that, we thought we could turn it into a magical bar and house some of the things that Richard's collected over the years. So we've got some of these old books. What's the oldest book you've got?
It's down there. I can see it now. 1880.
1898. That one.
1898.
And we've got memorabilia on the walls. We've got some of our. We've made a collage of some of our achievements. So it's just a really good sort of place to come and have a look around and have all our bits and bobs on display rather than in a box.
You're very renowned, both of you, for being so social and not just on cruise ships, but in your own home. You've built this bar because people love to be around you. If you're not at the Magic Convention, you're here at the Lava Lounge. There's a dartboard, and I know I finished the game off a couple of months ago with a bullseye. Got to get that in. And you've got some... we'll have a rematch after this talk, but Mike Goddard, the wonderful... you met Mike Goddard on the cruise ships when you're doing, was it Royal Caribbean?
Princess.
Or Princess?
Princess, yeah, Michael Goddard, yeah.
Yeah, he was in the front row of our show, watching our show.
Was he?
We found out by backstage that he was watching our show, the front row, and we were really nervous, weren't we?
Oh my God. But you've got like a dedicated, personalised painting by him.
Oh yeah, he did one for us, yeah.
And that's all about you and Hayley, about your magic years.
Yeah, he does, he comes onto the ships and does commissions, so if you want him to do a picture for you, he does. It's on that gold pen on a black canvas.
I love that.
And, you tell him some pointers.
You tell him what you want in it, and he'll draw it for you.
That's amazing.
In front of you, it's a really cool experience, actually.
And he's got he's actually done the Lava Lounge poster, which has inspired this whole bar.
Well, that's a limited edition one,
Yeah, that's incredible. And I love the fact that he has personalised the paintings that you've got behind you, Hayley, because you now have got this wonderful business that you do. Let's talk about a little bit about your business. I love it because we always buy whatever you do, and it's
Thank you.
a wonderful thing. So pass this on.
Yeah, so it's been 8 years now. Basically, I missed my creative side when I left Richard's show, and it just sort of fulfilled me. I really needed to do something like that again, and I absolutely love it. So I create different artworks for different occasions, starting school, Halloween's coming up.
Even the Queen's Jubilee, I bought some little teddy bears in a box.
Yeah, with little crowns on.
Yeah, that was amazing.
It's brilliant. I love it. Every day is different, and it's really great.
You talk about the creative side. I mean, you were a big part of Richard Griffin's act, and the costume change you did. Yeah. So I want to talk about the wonderful Paul Daniels.
Yeah.
He was a big part of your wedding night, wasn't he? I don't mean he was in the bedroom with you. Tell us what the connection is with your wedding day. You know, at the bar.
He was gone by then.
Oh, was he gone by the evening? No, well, let's talk about the. So was it? It was the.
It was. Well, it was.
It was a gift from your best man, wasn't it?
Yeah. I didn't realise. Yeah, I obviously didn't realise he was going to turn up. My best man, Jonathan, booked him to appear for us.
Reappear or just appear?
Just reappear, yeah. And do one of after doing the after dinner speeches, everyone's doing their speeches, and then my best man Jonathan said, "Well, I don't know how to finish off my speech, so I've got someone else to finish it off for me. Please welcome Paul Daniels." And then Paul Daniels walks through the door, and of course everyone erupts into cheers and things. And
Did he really? Well, as an amazing magician that you are, that still must mean so much to you. That one of your best mates organised for Paul Daniels to be at your wedding night. You and Hayley. The smiles. I've seen the pictures, and it looked like an amazing time.
Yeah, if you watch the video, you can see how shocked everyone is, and it was a lovely moment. It really was. And he was sat, I think, in the kitchen. 2 hours or something like that,
cooking rabbit stew.
Yeah, and then all the kitchen staff come out and listen to his speech as well.
Oh. Yeah. Do you remember any of the words that he said about you? Because you worked with him before then, so you knew Paul.
Yeah.
He was talking more about relationships and love and giving pointers. And...
So Paul Daniels, anyway, you knew Paul way before the wedding, so you worked with Paul on the Paul Daniels Magic Show. And how old were you back then?
I met Paul when I was about 13 at a convention. That's when I met him. I was with my mum at the Magic Convention and met him there briefly, and then I met him later on when I won competitions and things. And then after that, Ali Bongo asked me to come onto the Paul Daniels Magic Show to teach Paul how to do a dove production, because that's my speciality at the time, doing doves.
That's amazing.
Making doves appear out of hankies.
Yeah.
So, I went on to the Paul Daniels Magic Show and taught Paul how to produce a dove for one of the shows.
And how was he like to teach? I mean, as Paul Daniels, obviously, the Paul Daniels Magic Set, a lot of magicians would have learned their magic through his magic set, so watched his TV show. What was it like working with him?
Oh, it was great, yeah. He's very laid back, very nice guy. He was just, showed me some stuff and tricks and things while we was in rehearsals and stuff, and it was great, good experience. And then they asked me back again after that to lend me some doves to another magician that came across from America, so it was quite cool. Michael's, he's a magician. He's a mechanical magician, his name was.
Paul Daniels, I mean, he was so well respected within the magic world. Obviously, he was a water rat. I'm in the water rats, and he was a past king rat. Very well respected, and I really enjoyed touring with him. I know you knew that I toured with him for 6 weeks. We've done a wonderful show called Alice in Wonderland.
We saw it.
Him and Debbie, you did come to see us, didn't you?
Yeah.
So you knew him before I did. But Paul Daniels, Debbie McGee, they were the masters of magic, you know.
Yeah.
It was those years. If you talk about magicians, I asked Nina the other day, name me a magician from television. She said Paul Daniels. Everyone would just say, firstly, Paul Daniels. He was always out there, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah, if you're a certain age, you'd say him first off. Yeah, I mean, obviously.
Primetime telly.
Yeah. When we were kids, that was it, wasn't it? It was on every Saturday night, so...
Yeah, I will watch it because of ventriloquists. He always championed ventriloquists on his show.
Yeah.
Ronn Lucas. He made Ronn Lucas over here the name that he was, you know.
Yeah. He's always very helpful.
And everyone had the magic kit.
Yeah.
I had the magic kit.
Yeah,
and I tried to do a Paul Daniels magic trick in my assembly. When I first did a ventriloquist show in assembly, I had the Paul Daniels magic, and I tried to do the sponge. In my opening speech, before I brought the dummy out, I'd done the little sponge, and it all went wrong. And I said after that show, I'm never doing magic again.
With a sponge.
Just with a sponge. I gave up very easily. There's this wonderful moment when Paul Daniels has funded Debbie McGee's ballerina show. She'd done the whole tour, didn't she?
Yeah.
Or this static show that she did with the ballerinas. And you were working in the same venue while they were rehearsing, and you were doing a show that night. Can you tell me about that night when?
Well, we were rehearsing, and they were doing the show.
It was in my hometown, so I know this playhouse very, very well. So they let us use it.
Harlow
Playhouse. So they let us use the hall. It was brilliant, and he was just sitting in the.
We saw him in the canteen because they were obviously Debbie was doing her show that night. She wasn't in it. She was obviously.
I remember seeing it on a documentary. They showed a bit of her show. Wow.
Yeah. So obviously, because I knew him I didn't know they were going to be there that show because we were there all week rehearsing, and they were here just one night. And
it's just
saw him in the
coincidence.
canteen, and said, and Paul said, I'll come down and see what you're doing. So he came down and proceeded to be there for the next 3 hours. Just helping us with the illusions and stuff.
Can I just add this? It's the first day I've ever been a magician's assistant in my whole life.
No.
First day of rehearsals.
Really?
First day we ever stepped into a rehearsal studio, and Paul Daniels is there.
You must be so nervous.
Oh
Hayley.
my gosh, I was. But then after the third hour of him being in the room with us, it was really relaxed. He taught me so much. It was really good.
Yeah, it was great. And then after 3 hours, he looked at his watch and went, I better go and help Debbie in the show. So
you remember why he was in the building?
Yeah.
But then they comped us to go and see the tickets for the ballet that night.
Yeah,
did you see? So as a dancer, obviously you were a dancer, you got to see the ballet as well.
It was really good. I loved it. So we went back and watched the whole show.
Well, Debbie's amazing as a dancer, as a producer, director, and obviously as a magician's assistant. You must have looked up to her.
I watched loads of videos of different assistants, and she was definitely the one that I took most of my inspiration from.
Oh, that's lovely.
Brilliant.
That's amazing. And she ended up being the dancer in the end, didn't she, on Strictly?
Yeah.
Wasn't she great?
Yeah, bloody great.
Yeah, we loved her on there. Richard Griffin, what did Paul Daniels mean to you? Did he, was he one of those that did inspire you?
Yeah, he inspired me. Yeah, it was when I was growing up. It was obviously it's on every Saturday night. So he was the obviously go-to magician. He was there, and it was like obviously inspired me to do the magic. It was him and also David Copperfield, the American magician, who was also there were the two people that really on TV that I
didn't Paul
watched.
bring David Copperfield over to be on his show as well? Or?
Don't think so.
No, forget that. Thank you very much, Richard and Hayley Griffin, for being on Eyes and Teeth, talking about the wonderful Paul Daniels. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Eyes and Teeth. Here we are, live in the Lava Lounge. Next to me, funny enough, I've got a lady called Nina Hewlett. Now, Nina, I don't know if Richard and Hayley know this story, but you've got a story about Paul Daniels, haven't you?
It's a very bizarre story. Basically, I was about 6 months pregnant with our first daughter.
You talk about me, not you and Paul.
Yeah,
Okay.
You and me, Steve Hewlett. And I was, a lot of the times, struggling to sleep at night. And one night I had a really vivid dream. It was like I was hallucinating. And I did actually keep having dreams like this, and in my second pregnancy, it was just a thing I experienced, really vivid dreams, like hallucinations. And one particular night, I woke up, obviously I was still asleep, but I thought that I'd woken up. There was like a... there was a big... there was a big...
Big what?
There was a big hump in the bed. And I lifted up the quilt covers.
This is true. She told me this when she was pregnant. This is true.
And I can literally see it as I'm saying, retelling the story now. I can see it. I lifted up the covers and... What was he doing?
Say it. Say what you say.
I lifted up the covers and Paul Daniels was in the bed. Paul Daniels was in the bed, and I can't really explain it. But he was literally in the bed.
Did he say you're going to like this?
He just smiled at me.
Right, this disappeared.
And then I woke up and then I was like...
Was you using a rabbit at the time?
I woke up and I was like, oh my goodness. And then I woke you up and I was like, oh my God. It was so weird.
I remember
it
you
was a
telling
dream, but it wasn't
me.
a dream. It was a dream because it can't be real.
You just woke me up and told me you just seen Paul Daniels in our
was
bed.
in the bed.
And I said, I think you're hallucinating.
So that's my story. There was no
Doesn't
there
make
was
sense.
no like reason of all the people it could be that it would be him.
Well, there you go. That's Nina's story with Paul Daniels. Obviously, it was a dream. People dream about being with Paul Daniels, working with Paul Daniels, or just knowing him. And I've had those great experiences. And it's so nice to be with Richard and Hayley Griffin and Nina, who's only dreamt about being with Paul. But, well, we've actually been with Paul. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hayley and Richard.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Please welcome the fantastic Phil Hitchcock, talking about his experience meeting Paul as a young lad.
But I loved magic, even at that age. I loved magic since about 6 years old.
Yes.
My father used to show me card tricks and little tricks. And of course, I got the David Nixon magic set. I got the Paul Daniels magic set. Paul Daniels was the big name for me, though. He was the big influence when I was a 10-year-old child.
Yeah.
And I'd be about 9 or 10 years of age when we went on holiday to Blackpool. Wonderful Blackpool. And who was in summer season that year but Paul Daniels? I think it was when I was 10. I think it was 83. I'm sure some of your listeners might be able to correct me if I'm wrong with that. And he was at the Opera House. And I mean, looking back, when you think of this, he was doing 2 shows a day at the Opera House in Blackpool. That place seats over 3,000 people. So he was doing about 6,000 seats a day, 6 days a week.
Phenomenal.
I don't know how long the season was. You know, it was one amazing time for live entertainment. And it was an incredible show. And I still remember most of the things that were in there. But the best bit of all this was we went the day before just to, you know, in the Winter Gardens and just to look at the place and see the big poster of Paul Daniels' magic show and you know, and all the publicity for it and stuff. And while we stood there, behind us, we're looking at the stage door, behind us was like an arcade with all slot machines and all that. And we heard this voice, and whose voice was it but Paul Daniels? And when we went there to look, sure enough, there was Paul Daniels with his son there. I forget which one. I don't think it was Martin. And he was playing, I'll never forget, he was playing a Star Wars arcade machine. And he was playing it. And he was useless at it. I remember watching his gameplay and thinking, oh, you need some practice on that. That's not good, Paul. That's not... So, and when he finished, I just bought that day one of his new tricks as well, this domino trick. So
Oh, really? Wow. Yeah, Paul Daniels was a student at that Star Wars game. That's what you're saying.
He was. Yeah. He was very much a student, yeah. But you know what? It was just that it was absolutely perfect for a 10-year-old child to go up and say, well, I didn't even say hello. It was my mum that went over and said hello. You know, I hid behind her dress. You know, I was so scared. This was the main man. This is one of my heroes. And he was the most wonderful, most charming, most likable. He asked if we had a camera because he wanted to get a photo alongside with me. And he made me feel special. He made me feel like a VIP. He was a true star, That's real good. Star in that he devoted all of his time, all of his energy just on me. Even when other people were coming up, he would make them wait their turn until he'd finished with me. It was wonderful. It was, you know, I never forgot that moment. It was real magic. And then the following night we went to see the show, and of course he does some shout outs at the end of the show, and who did he shout out to but me, you know. And of course I couldn't shout out, I couldn't say anything, so we sat there in total silence.
Really?
Yeah,
missed the opportunity.
But, so that was me at 10 years old, you know. Just, I mean, that moment just solidified it forevermore.
I'm 46, so I think the variety, it was the Paul Daniels Magic Show. But for me, I was 12 when I started to get into ventriloquism, and then Paul Daniels would bring over the best ventriloquists from all over the world. You get Willie Tyler, Fred Roby, Ronn Lucas. And for you, he would bring over Lance Burton and, you know, Wayne Dobson and I guess Doug Henning and all these brilliant magic acts. And so is that what it done for me in the vent world? It must have done the same for you in the magic world.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was very passionate back then about the vents as well. Never forget seeing Ronn Lucas on there doing his row the boat routine with Scorch.
I spoke to him about that the other day. It is still my favourite routine. And he done it for me, and he pulled it apart and discussed how he started to do that song. But I remember it from the Paul Daniels Magic Show. That spot on the Paul Daniels Show with Ronn Lucas was one... Even today, it was one of the best TV clips he ever did. You know, it was just brilliant.
Yeah.
No, not the row test. Yeah. You don't know what that is. About 100 years ago, a ventriloquist claimed he could do both parts of row your boat. That's impossible.
Go ahead, Larry. Start the vamp. Go ahead. Are you ready? I'm not going to do this. You think you're making me talk, do you not?
I am making you talk.
Then why the hell are you arguing with yourself? On a count of 4, here we go. Take a deep breath. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Row your boat.
Row, gently row down the row, the stream, your boat. Merrily, gently, merrily down the merrily stream. Merrily life, merrily is but, merrily a dream. Merrily life, row is but, row a dream. Row your boat, row, gently row down the row, the stream, your boat. Merrily, gently, merrily down the merrily stream. Merrily life, merrily is but, merrily a dream. Merrily life is but a dream.
It was amazing, and it certainly left an imprint on my brain. You know, with I've spoken to a lot of people. I bet you know who this guy was, about an event act that was on there. It was a Vegas act, and it almost looked like a big counter. And each section of the counter sort of flipped up, and there was a 6-foot dummy. One of them was a big pink bird / showgirl, and they'd do a little chat with that, and then he'd flip another one out, and it was another character. Do you recall?
That's
do you know what?
incredible. I told you earlier about sort of finding out new things because I'm trying to close my book and publish it. And then you're giving me something I now have to investigate.
Oh, well, you know what? I'm at my parents' at the moment, and I have it on. I still have all my VHS cassettes.
I have a lot of them. Yeah,
it's on there somewhere, and I have seen a clip somewhere online of this act, and it's brilliant because he's a worker. You can tell he's a worker.
Yes,
you can tell he's been working twice a day for 6 nights a week in Vegas. 7 nights a week, whatever he was doing back then. And there's a lovely moment at the end. There's a surprising ending.
Ice and Teeth. I'm very blessed to have a friend in my next guest. We're both on the committee of the Max Miller Appreciation Society. Not only was he the TV producer of the Ronn Lucas Show, the Paul Daniels Magic Show, and the Michael Parkinson shows, but he's also one of the finest authors of the comedy, magic, and variety genres. It's an honour to welcome to Eyes and Teeth, John Fisher. Eyes and Teeth. Welcome back to Eyes and Teeth, the wonderful John Fisher. Now, where did you find Paul Daniels and when did you connect before the series started, which I believe was 4 years later in 1979?
I vividly remember the first time I saw Paul Daniels. It was one of those occasions which is going to be ingrained in your memory forever, on a level with when Jimmy Tarbuck first went on to Sunday Night at the Palladium, and you knew, even though you'd never heard of him before, you knew that this young performer had the most brilliant career ahead of him. It happened again, and I had a bit of a hand in it, I'm proud to say, when Billy Connolly made his first appearance on the Parkinson Show.
One of the greatest moments, yes.
He never looked back and religiously came on Parky every year ever after, and needed to do little other television at that time to keep his name before the public. And look what happened to him. Well, it happened with Paul Daniels round about the middle 1970s, on a show called the Wheel Tappers and Shunters Club, which was a wonderful evocation of an old northern working men's club, whether they have them like that these days, compared brilliantly by a very great comedian who doesn't get his full desserts, Bernard Manning.
Yes.
And a lot of people can criticise Bernard Manning, and maybe today it would be a little politically incorrect, but Bernard never meant to upset anybody, any more than Paul meant to upset anybody. But when he said, now here's a young magician, da-da-da-da-da, his name's Paul Daniels, so he tells us, and Paul came on. And it was riveting. You wondered where this performer had been for so long. Well, of course, he'd been working the clubs, honing his skills, and you knew that here was a young man who was going to go far if he had the opportunities, possibly easier for a comedian than for a conjurer. The standout feature of his act was a routine called the electric chairs, where, without knowing how or why, members of the audience find themselves jumping up and down off their chairs as if they'd been receiving an electric shock, though no electricity was involved. I just mention that because the impact Paul himself had, that first show was electric. And he did quite a bit of work for Granada Television over the next 2 or 3 years, whereupon the BBC picked him up. I had him on a special for the BBC. We'd actually had to get permission from Granada for him to appear on it. This was a collage of different magic acts, and within 2 or 3 years he's actually got his own show. And within 2 or 3 years, the Paul Daniels Magic Show is riding high on Saturday night on BBC television. And it was responsible for bringing back a greater public awareness of magic, which had become perhaps a little jaded in recent history, partly, I think, because of the laziness of variety producers who might say, well, we want a magic act, we'll call up an agent, the agent would provide them with an act, without them thinking, well, are we booking the best? Now, even though I say it myself, if there was one person who knew who the best were to invite as guests onto Paul's show, it was myself, because I'd studied the art of magic and I knew who were the acts we wanted to bring from America, from Europe, from all over, from Australia on one occasion. And that is what gave the show a freshness. In saying that Paul Daniels became the public face of magic is not, however, to take anything away from one of my absolute heroes, a man called David Nixon, who for many years had kept the flag flying for magic, but was obviously nearing the end of his career. And I remember Paul telling me that he was a little worried in those early years of his success, because he was invited onto the Royal Variety performance. And Paul looked down the list of all the other guests and saw that David Nixon was in this list. And so he said to the producers, isn't there going to be a bit of a clash between, you've got Paul Daniels and you've got David Nixon, and we both do sort of similar things in different ways. And it was explained to him that there was no clash at all, because David had agreed to come on in what was called a Shayna number. And the Shayna number is where you get as many big names and faces as you can possibly get together on the stage at one time. Okay. All they have to do is walk on, nod to the audience, maybe a word here and a word there. Maybe there's a chorus number they all sing together. And David had been put as part of that, which I seem to think might have been that sequence from My Fair Lady where they all walk on, when they're all the Ascot Gavotte, they're dressed to the nines as if they're having a day at the races. So that eased Paul's nerves. And when he arrived at the Palladium for his first rehearsal, there was a note waiting for him at the stage door, and it read, "Dear Paul, it's your turn now. Love, David."
Oh, wow.
And how magnanimous can you get? Working with him was an education, because, okay, actors, they memorize lines for drama series and sitcoms week in, week out, and we think nothing of it. And of course, I imagine, I don't know how much they're allowed to use prompts these days. I'd have thought it was in the production's interest if they did, to an extent. But when you think what Paul was doing, he was having to master a complete repertoire of magic for each individual show. Paul was an act that way back in the days of the music hall could have taken the electric chairs and some of the other items. He made his own, what was called the chop cup, with the cup and the ball, what was the unequal ropes, where you have 3 bits of rope and they're all one length and they're all different lengths. He could have gone around the theatres forever, as people did, working that same routine. And public memory is very short, and suddenly they see so much, the audiences, and it's all fresh again. You can't do that every week on television.
No.
So within the space of, okay, we had a little bit of run-up time to each series, but each programme required at least 4 major routines for Paul to get on top of. And also because you had to keep it varied, you had to keep the public interested. Some of them would require sleight of hand, some of them would require the presentation of big illusions, which might look like an easier end of magic, but it requires a great deal of skill and coordination. Some of them might be audience participation pieces. Some of them might be audience participation pieces. Others stand-up comedy pieces. And each week he delivered. He would come along to rehearsals each day, then he'd go away, come the afternoon, and I imagine spend all evening getting on the inside track of all these numbers. And it was when he came out and performed, okay, you had the occasional slip-up, you had the occasional retake, but everyone had that. Mm-hmm. But when Paul came out, he could have been doing those items every single night of his life. And he kept that under my stewardship, certainly up for 11 years, and then carried on sometime afterwards. And the versatility of the man in that regard was stunning, as was his adaptability. I remember saying to him once, look, I think it would be a wonderful idea for one of the shows, I think it might have been a Christmas show, if you were to do the Houdini water torture escape. Now this was something where Houdini got shackled and handcuffed and then suspended upside down and then lowered, suspended on a chain into this large rectangular, imagine a glass wardrobe,
yes,
full of water.
Wow.
A lot of splashing, a lot of clock watching. How long can he hold his breath? The screens came round, the suspense built, and the suspense built, and of course Houdini freed himself. In the end, the item wasn't performed in that way by Paul for lots of different reasons. But the most telling thing, I was prepared to say, you should do the Houdini water torture cell. And for him to turn around and say, that's a joke. He turned around to me, he said, well, that's fine, he said. But if I'm going to do that, and we were thinking of a couple of months ahead,
right.
He said, we've got to think of a way for me to get a tan. Because if I'm going to be stripped to the waist, now that's wonderful. Yes. The fact that he was thinking of how the audience would perceive it, not whether can you swim, not very well.
Can you get out of it?
Can you get out of it? Yeah, that's another matter.
Yes.
Not because there's, even though Houdini was not killed doing it, there was a film made with Tony Curtis playing Houdini, which led the public to believe
he died during that.
He died during that. That's not true.
Okay.
But it could well have been if something had gone wrong. And nothing is 100% foolproof once you start courting danger, or even giving the illusion of courting danger.
You'd be worried about the tan lines dripping.
But the fact that he was just thinking about looking good for the audience and not about being shackled by the ankles, being held on a chain, being lowered upside down. Goodness me, that was... my stomach churns just thinking of it.
Yes.
But it was a classic illusion, and Paul was in the business of presenting classic magic to a new audience, bringing magic up to date, which he did. And I'll never forget that. But the other thing he had a quick-wittedness, which I found unbelievable. We all hear of comics with great ad-libs, and I think we also know that a lot of comics, and I'm not knocking any of them, people like Tommy Trinder and Ted Ray were two veteran performers who just had an encyclopedic mind of one-liners and always had the right one for the right occasion.
I saw them on Ted Ray on the Joker's Wild TV show with Barry Cryer hosting.
Yeah.
And Ted Ray always come out with the one-liners. He was brilliant.
Yeah. And that's a skill of its own. Paul didn't necessarily have that. Paul wasn't a comedian, but Paul had the ability to sort of, on the spur of the moment, come up with the line that is impressive, is appropriate, and is hilariously funny. And he told me himself that when we first started the show, he was very anxious. We have a script writer on board. And I said, no, Paul, you don't need a script writer, because if you gave him a joke, he couldn't tell it. He didn't have the ease at telling a joke. We can all tell a joke.
Yes.
But to tell a joke with the brilliance of Max Miller or Ted Ray or Groucho Marx is a different matter.
Delivery, yes.
But if it was on the spur of the moment, and Paul said, you know, you're right, he said, I can look at my own shows, say, several months after we've done them, and I can't remember that I said that line. It's as if I'm hearing it for the first time. And there are a couple of wonderful examples. One of his basic situation was, as you know, to get a member of the audience up to help him, and he'd have standard chat, what's your name, where you're from, are you married, what do you do for a living? And he had this lady on the set with him, and he was about to offer her the fan of cards, and he said, and what do you do for a living? And she said, oh, I'm a nurse. And at that moment, for a reason Paul just could not explain, the cards fell out of his hands. Must not. And there was a beat. He said, I used to be a magician. And it sounds scripted, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It just came
wow,
with that.
That is clever, isn't it?
And there was a...
So you did have a quick-witted mind.
Oh, and on one occasion, you know, the BBC was a strange organisation, it probably still is. If you had a letter of complaint from a member of the audience, it first of all had to go to the programme correspondence section, even though it might have been addressed to Paul Daniels or to John Fisher or the producer of the Paul Daniels show. And they would assess the letter and then take a form and a stapler and staple the form to the letter and send it to me if it was a complaint about the Paul Daniels show, and for my comments. And then I would have to send it back, and they would reply if they thought a reply was needed. How to make jobs for people. However, Paul had done a routine. It was nothing more than a comedy throwaway. It was a series of strange inventions, cod inventions, like the fork where you turn the handle to wind the spaghetti up on the fork. And what we did, we had an old gramophone turntable, and on the turntable was a goldfish bowl, and in the goldfish bowl was a goldfish. And Paul said, now I want you to show you my latest invention. It's a self-exercising machine for goldfish. And he clicked the turntable on, and the goldfish bowl is going round. The letter comes through. Dear sir, I was appalled to see the ill treatment meted out by Paul Daniels to the goldfish on his programme last Saturday. It was quite obvious, this was all serious, it was quite obvious that the goldfish was in a disoriented condition, etc., etc. And you think, come on. Now, I couldn't believe I'd received this letter, or that the Programme Correspondence Society had taken it seriously.
Yes.
And I was due to have lunch with Paul that day, so I gathered my notes for the lunch, and I picked up the memo and the days before email. And I said, now Paul, before we sit down and talk about the show, you've got to read this. And he read the letter, as I've read it to you. And he said, do you mind if I reply to it for you? I said, delighted, and said to whomever it, as I sit here in this restaurant, eating my trout, I have to think that the goldfish got off rather lightly. I kept the letter.
Yes.
I never sent it back, but brilliant.
Great reply. And you want to reply with humour, don't you? Just to say, it's a trick.
But come on, you know, what are people doing?
I know, it's television, isn't it? It's magic.
Then there was the occasion he did subject himself to a supposedly dangerous illusion on a Halloween show, far less dangerous actually than the upside down water torture cell, and it's where you're stood in a sort of mummy case, and the door of the mummy case is sort of round, as in WOUND, towards you, and on the inside of the door these spikes.
Yes,
so the idea, when they in the Middle Ages they put a witch in such an instrument of torture and wind the spikes, and it must have been some mess to clear up afterwards. The idea was, we thought, because I'd been asked to produce a show for Halloween. It was going to go out live. It's Halloween, and one of my great heroes is a man called Hitchcock.
Alfred Hitchcock. Yes.
And if you can't put a shiver down the spine of your audience once in a while on an occasion like that, then when can you? So Paul got into the contraption, and it was shut, and the clock was timed to go for a minute, I suppose, might have been a minute and a half, and it kept ticking. And as it kept ticking, we pretended that something had gone wrong. And the company, the department, the department that look after the bits between the programs, realised that we weren't going to run the roller caption, and they faded, and a voiceover came in rather somberly saying, "We're not quite sure what has happened there. The Paul Daniels show, we will keep you informed." Da 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 da, and the phone started ringing.
Oh my goodness!
And we all got our knuckles wrapped over that one.
Is that how the show ended as well?
Yes, yes.
So people wondered what's happened to Paul Daniels.
Yeah, just as Orson Welles had done a trick like that on American radio when he'd done a dramatisation of the War of the Worlds, and the Martians invaded, and people turned on that and thought they were listening to an actual radio...
The news.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. But we got the last laugh because we had a great champion in Michael Grade.
Yes.
Who was one of the few people I worked with at an executive level in the BBC who really knew what entertainment was about. He said, "There's only one question, two questions I have to ask you. Could Paul really have been hurt? No. He was away, on his way home. And did it endanger any member of the public? And it didn't." He said, "Well, no."
No.
You know? But they did insist on the night that Paul appear. The show went out at 8:30. I guess it appeared after Match of the Day. Parkinson wasn't on then. After Match of the Day, and said, "Hello again, I just want you to know I'm safe and well, and I'll see you on the Paul Daniels Magic Show next week."
Really? Wow.
But
that's great television. Though,
great television.
So, John, you produced over 80 episodes of the Paul Daniels Magic Show. You were key in bringing to the UK greatest variety acts around the world, as you mentioned earlier. George Carl, the Pendragons, Cirque du Soleil, Ricky Jay, Jeff McBride, Hans Moretti. Brilliant variety acts. And of course for me, the great ventriloquists Willie Tyler, Fred Roby and Shari Lewis, Ronn Lucas, all inspirations to me. So did Paul Daniels help you with choosing acts, or did you go abroad? Did you go to Vegas?
No, I had carte blanche and I had total editorial control.
Right, wow.
Because after proving how unpleasant he could be at the early years of the series, I said it's either my word or his word. and he was told that I chose the acts, and to a large extent I dictated the material. Now, of course, I welcomed ideas from him, from Eli Bongo, from Ghillini, who was a great magician in his day, who came on as a consultant on the programme, and that was essential. But ultimately, the shows started 3 months before we went into production, and I had 2 big boards in my office, and one was the board with all the names of all the acts to shuffle around, and the other was the board with all the tricks, the big illusions with one colour, and the sleight of hand items which required dexterity to learn in another, a mind reading genre, another number still, audience participation. And so it was all colour coded, and so all these things came together. The great ventriloquists, of course, but arguably you've omitted the most important, Senor Wences.
Senior Wences, of course, yeah. This was just a little list at the top of my head.
Yeah.
But Senior Wences I saw on the Muppet Show just yesterday with my children.
Oh.
They're re-showing that on the Disney Channel.
I recorded on Sky the other day a film called A Mother Wore Tights. And in the centre of what is a pretty average backstage story, there is a sequence where the stars hold a children's party. They're all touring America, and they decide it's Christmas or somebody's birthday to hold a party for the families of all the people in the cast with them. And there are 2 acts in this miniature cabaret within the movie. One is a man called the Banana Man, A. Robbins the Banana Man, and this isn't the place to tell you about his routine, but it was once described to me as the greatest special act that ever was, and I can show you a picture of him in a minute in the hallway out there. And of course, Senor Wences, with little Johnny and painting the figure on his hand, and the box with the head inside. All right, it's okay, it's all right. And the chicken, I think they had time for the chicken. The advantage I had was I was able to let him do the full act. And because it was very important to get an act like that there for posterity. And I subsequently persuaded Albert Savine to put his whole act together.
You brought him out of retirement to come on with Savine, didn't you? And that the acts that you allowed him to do on that show is at least a full 12 minutes of everything that he did, beautifully as he did it.
Yeah, I persuaded Albert to come out. His daughter worked as a PA within the BBC, knew her, she helped. And he said, because we'd had a big success with Rob Murray the Juggler, who'd brushed up his act, which he hadn't done for 10 years. And I said to Albert, would you be prepared to put the act together again? And I'd overlooked one thing. And he said, well, you realise I'll have to train another dog. And I'd overlooked that.
Yes.
It was a real dog, and real dogs pass away. And he said, but give me 6 weeks.
To audition dogs.
He auditioned, he found a dog, he trained it. Week before the show, he said, do you mind if I come along to the show before the one I'm on? I said, why? He said, I just want to walk the little fellow around the studio so it can get accustomed to the cameras and the stage territory. And you think, that's wonderful. It's a bit like Paul thinking, where am I going to get my tan? And he came on and he did the act as if he'd been at the Palladium the week before. And wonderful people. There's a whole programme we could do on speciality acts.
Yes. Please welcome from an earlier recording on Eyes and Teeth to talk about magic and his father, Paul, Martin Daniels. The first time I met you, Martin, was when I was on tour with your father, and that is a highlight for me of my career, as a highlight working with Paul Daniels and Debbie McGee over in Hunstanton. And I remember meeting you. Lewis was there.
Both the kids came over, Lewis and Camilla.
Yours were there, Camilla, and they were very young, actually. So This was 6-7 years ago. I remember buying your dad a little magic trick, which you don't really do. You don't buy magicians' magic tricks, but do you remember that little trunk box?
I moved the little box, and it was how to find looking for the key. How could you open it?
Trying to open it, and he couldn't do it, could he? But you did.
Could we open it? So, because I remember him showing it to me, and you and I had just met then. The process I used to go for it. I remember you asking Debbie, are all the Daniels like this?
Oh, did I? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, it's all right. We've just gone through the process, I guess, the logical, magical process of going through it.
Yes, it's amazing. I thought there's no way I'm going to flummox these guys on this, but you worked it out, which is great. So when I was touring with Paul and Debbie, not only did I get to rehearse with these legends, but you know, the performers that I grew up watching, but to hear the stories that your father would tell, and we were always next door in the dressing rooms, because this Alice in Wonderland was a theatre tour, so I got to tour with them, and we'd be in a different town, and there's about 5 towns we went to that Easter, and it was wonderful. And Paul would come in with a trick or tell me a gag. He was always telling jokes, wasn't he? He's always had a new gag for you, and he would bring the bunny round, and it was Harry at the time. Brought the bunny round to meet my daughter, little Lola. Yeah. It was just really magical for me, and it was so nice I got to meet you on that tour as well.
I remember coming down and, as I say, bringing the kids down, and how different they are now. Lewis at at university. Camilla's about to provide me with my first grandchild.
Oh wow!
So.
Wow, that's
how to feel old, yes.
Yeah, I think she was 5 when I met her, so it's hard to believe all that. I wrote a gag actually last year, and it was my daughter's just broke some news to me. You know, she's moving in with her boyfriend. He lives in Broadmoor, so it's not great news.
We are losing our sense of humour.
Yeah,
I think
it's all been taken away from us, and I guess you have to be careful. But I've been listening to and tuning into like TV shows on BBC. You know, you can be in the audience, and I've watched a few of those with Paul Merton and doing just a minute, or the Now Show with Punt and Dennis. I've seen a couple of stand-up shows that way as well, and I don't think it's really changed that much, to be honest, Martin. I think we still got creative freedom, I think, and it depends. There may be some jokes you may have to drop because you can't mention certain things that you could a year ago. Because of, you know, all of the... even before COVID came along, ladies and gentlemen was a phrase that you could use, but it just started to... On the cruise industry, I think they started to say, OK, you can't say ladies and gentlemen now. And that used to be my nervous word. Do you know, sometimes when you're doing a show and you watch it back and, oh, my God, I've said that like 20 times. And I didn't know I was saying... But ladies and gentlemen was one thing I would say a lot because I was nervous or thinking of the next gag. And just something as simple as that, I think that is being changed, isn't it?
Ladies and gentlemen sounds so much better than right, you lot.
Does it though? Not in Clacton.
or maybe we'll say ladies and gentlemen and anybody else.
Yes. I think we're going to have to, because when you get that cruise itinerary of what not to say, I think they may have to add to it. And I don't think it's going to be too much of a problem, but you know, you're very funny. You've got a lot of gags in your routines and comedy, magic related material. So I think you can just tweak it a little bit, I think. And I don't think I don't think we're going to be muted too much. There's just certain things. And I think really at the end of the day, it's common sense, isn't it?
I always try to say to people, you know, that apart from, there's one or two, every generation has what we call shock comedians. Yes. But taking them out of the equation, no entertainer is going to go on stage, you know, our genre, light entertainment. Nobody's going to go on stage and purposely offend the audience. That's the last thing in the world that we want to do.
No,
we want the audience on our side. Yes. And I always think back to you know, the comedians who performed throughout the war, World War II, and they all did jokes about, you know, the Blitz, and they talked about the rationing, and they they did jokes against Hitler and what have you.
They went with the times.
And yeah, we went with the time, and that was it. But I worry that whether there's certain, when you try to do humour of the day, it's like, ooh, don't mention that.
Yeah, like topical. I mean, if you're topical, then you just have to choose, I guess, don't you? It's got a little bit too sensitive. I think that sort of thing, and now... but Prince Philip's just left the hospital, hasn't he? Our companion rat that he left this morning.
Has he? Oh, that's good news, yeah.
He doesn't look great, but bless him, he's out. He's 99, and I think he wants his big birthday at home. So
he wants to get a telegram from his wife.
Do you think she'll do that? You've just got to hand it to him, hasn't she? I guess.
Okay, but I bet you she will. I bet you she will, because they are quite funny together, aren't they?
Yes. Yeah, I saw him on The Crown.
Was it a year or two ago? Yeah, it was her birthday, and he dressed as one of the guards with the red tunic and the bear skin.
Did he?
And he was standing on duty outside as she walked past.
I didn't know that. That's funny.
Funny bit. So I would imagine that she'll return that and give him a telegram.
Yeah, well, he deserves it, I think. I think he's been there for her, hasn't he? And they were good actors. I did watch The Crown with Nina. We were kind of into that. Have you been into any of the TV? We've done so many seasons of different things, but have you been interested in any of that, you and your family?
What, the binge watching?
Yeah, the Tiger Kings, the obvious. We just got into Shameless because we've done everything else, and Shameless from like 10 years ago, and it's brilliant. I can't believe we missed it.
No, I've done Sons of Anarchy.
I love that. Yeah, I'm halfway through that actually.
And then, when you finish that, there's another one called Mayans, which is a spin-off from it. It's the same writer, same producer.
Oh, brilliant.
But it's the Mexican gangs.
Wow.
What else? Peaky Blinders.
Oh, hello.
Peaky Blinders.
That's my only connection. I've never seen it. But
you've got the clothes. You've got the hat.
Yeah, I've got the fan club outfits and T-shirts, but never seen it.
What else have I done? Line of Duty.
Yeah, not seen that as well, and that's really popular, isn't it?
And there's weird stuff. Fortitude was something I discovered.
All right.
Which is a sort of a strange thing. It's set up in Norway, up in the Arctic Circle.
Oh,
that's a strange. We like strange dramas.
Fortitude.
But I tend to go off. I don't tend to. If I see that everybody's watching it, I'm usually about a year or two after behind everybody else, to be honest.
Yeah. Paul's garage, and it was just full of props. And he did tell me that Dad built a lot of these, these props for the show, and it's amazing to have that skill, Did he or did you take on any of building props at all, or did you always just get them bought, or did you just buy them from makers? Because I know.
No, I like to make stuff as well.
You do? Brilliant.
When my first job leaving school at 15 was working backstage for my dad. In a summer season in Great Yarmouth.
At Britannia? Must have been Britannia
Pier, yeah. And so I got a job as a stagehand that year, and but I was also looking after. It was his first year as top of the bill, and so I was while I was working backstage. My main task was to look after the magic.
Right.
Because again, it was his first time top of the bill, so it wasn't a case of him walking on with his box and doing his act. It was he'd be front cloth talking about something, curtain flies away, the illusion's there, and then he would perform it. So he wanted somebody behind the scenes to set it all up, who knew what was what.
And you knew how it works, of course.
Yeah. And then when the summer season finished, he basically didn't have a need for me anymore. And so I went, I went off to work with my granddad. And so I spent sort of 8 or 9 months in the workshop with him.
Oh, nice.
Working on everything and working on the props and what have you, till the following summer season. And then I'd do that. And then
again.
Back in the workshop, and then we went into the West End, and that was the end of it. But I like to make my own stuff when I can, or if I buy something usually I either want to tweak it, remake it, redesign it, or it just needs remaking because the bought props are not made to withstand the rigours of a tour.
Touring, yeah. And you want to make it unique to yourself and your own show, don't you? So you don't want it to look like all the others. And
I find, again, no disrespect to anybody, but I do find sometimes if you buy a bought prop, nothing looks more like a bought prop than a bought prop.
Yes, yeah.
And especially with magic tricks, and they're made of glittery this and sparkly that, and I don't want that look in my show. So I tend to take it apart and put it back together again. If you're mechanically minded, you know where the weak spots are, where it's going to break.
Yeah.
And so you can get to it before.
You know the ins and outs, haven't you? And you certainly do know how it all works. And so that's nice. Did your dad use you in the show at all? Was you ever an assistant? Did you have to get in any illusions when you were?
Yeah.
You did, yeah.
various times. If it didn't call for a glamorous assistant, then
yes.
If it was somebody just coming on and moving something, it was usually entail me coming on just in the background, really, most of the time for that stuff. Until later on, when I got featured, the first feature was on the Christmas TV show, Christmas special, when I did the Houdini water torture.
Really? That's one hell of a one to start with, isn't it? Terrifying.
Yeah, it was. And I think I was about 18 when that went out. And it was odd, because, as I say, Christmas special. So we rehearsed it we couldn't do it at the rehearsal rooms, at the BBC rehearsal rooms, because of the weight of the prop.
Yes.
Because once it's full of water, and it had to be on a concrete floor and not in a studio. There was 8 stories at the old BBC rehearsal rooms at Acton.
Wow.
So we rehearsed it in an old warehouse down Scrubs Lane, and it's funny looking at some of the stills from it. That there's my dad and Ali Bongo and Gildini, who were magical advisors on the programme. And they're all standing around, and they've got their overcoats on and their caps and scarves and gloves.
It's freezing.
And I'm stood next to them in a pair of swimming trunks.
In at the deep end, literally.
So not a lot of sympathy there.
No.
But it was a strange one. I was lucky. I mean, we got permission from the Houdini Museum in Toronto to go over and photograph his props.
Okay.
And so we made an exact replica of Houdini's thing, and used his method as well, which was incredible. Sadly, the Houdini Museum then was damaged in a fire, so the one I use is the only one left. But it was weird trying to. How do you learn something like that? So I thought, well, I'll go to the swimming baths. I've got to practice being underwater. That's what I've got to do.
Did you panic all the lifeguards? Did you?
Well, yeah, because there was a stopwatch on the wall in the swimming baths.
Right.
I guess for people doing laps and everything. So I looked at it. When it got to the top, big breath and underwater I went until my lungs were bursting. Then I burst through the surface and realised I'd only been under like 10 seconds. And thought, this is not good enough. This is not good enough for the trick. And so I managed to build up my time underwater. And then it's funny, when you're rehearsing, you tend not to think about what it looks like to the outside world.
Really?
Because rehearsals are weird. Do you not find with pantos and things like you look into a rehearsal room and you've usually got people standing in corners talking to themselves. And it would look strange.
Yes,
but I thought I need to. What does it feel like to be upside down? So again, I'm in a public swimming baths. I tried doing handstands and things like that, which I wasn't having much joy with. So I thought, a brilliant brainwave. So I laid on the side of the pool, and then I spun myself outwards so that I got to the point where my legs were on the side. The side of the pool was up to my hips. And so I folded my body at the hips so that my body and head were now upside down in the swimming baths, in the underwater. And I did that, held my breath until next thing was I'm getting dragged by the ankles by the lifeguard. Probably thought it was the worst suicide attempt they'd ever seen, but
wow.
That's how we got there. Yeah, there's a couple of. I think the reasons why I was featured in the show was one. My dad suffered terribly from claustrophobia, and so he wasn't. It would have been a bit of a nightmare for him. Wow. And of course, this was Christmas '81, I think, and of course he was still wearing a syrup then. You see, and
okay.
And he didn't want to be upside down underwater with that on his head, did he? So hence I was discovered.
Oh, I see. Martin, get in there.
Get in there.
What's that hairy jellyfish down there?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Yeah, so I suppose there was, claustrophobia. I was an assistant for a magician, actually, called Steve Hull. I think he does children's shows now. But he started to do illusions, and I had to get into boxes when I didn't know I had to do it until one day he told me that you have to be an assistant. Yeah, I was an assistant. I got quite claustrophobic, but this magician insisted that I was his assistant when I wasn't doing my little vent show, only about 20 minutes when I was 15. But he would put me on to do the show, and then I'd have to get in his illusions. But claustrophobia, I do get that. I don't like being in boxes, We're going to be in the box for the rest of our sleeping life, aren't we? I don't want to be in it just yet.
Yeah. So you turned yourself into a ventriloquist sketch. I'm not going in that box.
I'm not going in the box. And so was magic encouraged around the house? I mean, did Paul want his children to get into it, or were you the only one that showed interest?
I was the only one that showed interest. My mum was a magician too. And so she did
was she a dancer
act.
As well? Was your mum a dancer as well? She
her hobby was ballroom dancing, but she didn't perform on stage as a dancer. But yeah, so he did his own act. He was Ted Daniels at the time. She was Jackie Daniels, and then they did an act together called the Eldanis.
Okay,
it's kind of continental sound to it,
yeah.
And it's an anagram of Daniels, really. But that's nice. What they did.
Wow.
And they did. It was choreographed magic to music, not speaking. If you can imagine that from my dad.
I can't actually.
And so when I was a kid, preschool, the house was full of props.
Right. Intriguing for a young lad.
Yeah, spare room, and so that was full of props and this, that, and the other. They weren't fully professional at the time. They were semi-pros doing the clubs.
Right.
Because daytime they had a mobile shop, and then upgraded, and we had a corner shop.
All right.
Like Arkwright's open all hours type shop, one of them. So the magic was the tricks were in the house, and so as a preschool toddler, the magic props were my toys.
Oh, amazing! So you used to hide in the boxes, and they've got an early one here. That's great.
So I was just brought up with that. I was the only one who showed any interest in wanting to perform, because it's a weird thing. Because I was saying preschool because my mum and dad parted when I was about 5 or 6.
Right.
And so kind of all the props went then. Because of the times situation, I didn't see much of my dad from the age of 5 until I was probably 10 or 11, really. And that's because I'd reached an age then where I was old enough. He was doing summer season in Jersey, I remember, with... Michael Bentine and the Ivy Benson Band.
Wow.
And
Bentine was funny.
First time I'd ever been on an aeroplane. At the age of 10, me and my younger brother was considered too young to go. So I think I was 10 and my brother was 12. And Mum drove us to Teesside Airport. I don't think you'd get away with this now. She drove us to the airport. We checked in. and went through a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old.
On your own? Wow.
On our own.
Two of you? Wow.
Just the two of us.
Go to Jersey.
Go to Jersey and your dad will meet you. And it was like, how will I know him when I get there?
Wow.
Will he know me? And it was terrifying, really.
So how long were you there for? You there a couple of weeks, or was it just a weekend?
No, we did. We went for like 4 weeks, I think.
Oh, okay, right. The proper summer holidays.
And from then on, that's what we used to do. Me and my brothers would go off for like 4 weeks to wherever Dad was doing his summer season, and that's really where I got into it. The other two would be wanting to go off down the arcades or the promenade or something, and I just wanted to stay backstage and
take it all in. Yeah,
take it all in. Yeah, and I used to set up his tricks for him for his show. He was doing 12 minutes, I think, in the Val Doonican show, and so he got called out to called away for a phone call at the stage door one day, and when he came back, I think I was about 12, and I said, "Don't worry, Dad, I've set the act up for you. It's all ready to go." And he said inside he was thinking, "Oh my God," because he didn't want anybody else touching. You know, I wouldn't. I want to set my own props up. But he said he had a look in the box, and he said it was as if he'd done it himself, and so that became my summer job. Was always going in and setting up the stuff for him.
You've
and
got the
putting it
job
out on the stage, and
got the job, and you're cheap. So
yeah.
Talking about being a ventriloquist when I was younger, your father was key, along with John Fisher, to bring over to the UK some of the greatest ventriloquists luckily I've ended up meeting them, and I love the guy. So Ronn Lucas is one of those. Fred Roby, Roby and Savine. Yeah, I mean, I think they saw him in Vegas or something, and they brought Ron over to do, and he ended up doing 4 TV series over here. So if it wasn't for the Paul Daniels Magic Show, I might not be here.
But if it wasn't for Ron Lucas, I'd still be doing Lingo.
Really? Was that the show that took over? Was it? Sometimes I've mentioned the Ron Lucas show, and sometimes it's stopped something else happening, you know. But I guess that's how TV works.
That's how TV works. What happened was John Fisher, who for many years produced the Paul Daniels Magic Show, and Parkinson, left the BBC and went to Thames Television. This must have been about 88-ish, I think, to become the head of variety, head of light entertainment.
Right.
And I had done one series of Lingo, which is been brought back recently. We did it. Went out on it was only a 30-minute program when I did it. It was going out at 8 o'clock on a Thursday night.
Oh, okay.
Number 2 on the game show charts, I'll have you know.
Was it?
Number 2 on the game show. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Ask me what number 3 was on the game show charts.
What was number 3? Was else?
I couldn't possibly tell you. Every second counts.
So the whole Daniels family were up in the charts on TV. That's wow.
But then John Fisher, I'd recorded, in between recording and transmission, John Fisher took over at Thames Television. So they came in and said, right, although your show is in the top 10, we won't be doing another series because it's a case of last in, first out.
Oh, that's how it went.
It was either me or Des O'Connor, and they weren't going to get rid of Des because he'd been there forever and an established superstar. They were going to get rid of the new kid on the block.
Yes.
And it was to I'm fine with it. It was to make room for John wanted to get his ideas onto screen.
Right.
One was to bring Ron Lucas over, and the other was to do the Best of Magic.
Martin, it's been a pleasure, mate. Best to all the family. Really, really great to see you. It's really nice.
Cheers, pal. Nice to see you too.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Martin.
All right, pal.
That was comedy magician Martin Daniels, busier than ever today. You can find Martin and his whereabouts on Facebook as Martin Daniels. Talking about the variety shows, BGT and New Faces, completely different talent shows really, but you would make the ultimate BGT judge. Has this ever been approached at all, or is this a secret? Or you would be amazing, wouldn't you?
Oh, I'd love to do
No,
it.
I didn't know if you'd been asked
No,
before.
I've never been asked.
You know, when David Walliams went, I thought,
No,
Joe
I
Pasquale.
totally agree, because they've got Bruno doing it there, haven't they? And
It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
With all due respect to Bruno, I think he's great at what he does.
Yeah, he's amazing, but
Great when it comes to dancing, but on this, he doesn't know his arse from his elbow.
no.
But listen, they asked me, I'd jump at it, but you know, I'm
Brilliant.
quite happy.
Let's put it out there. I just think you'll be awesome on the show. Even Nina said today, it's the ultimate, isn't it? Because you can judge variety as you've done everything.
Yeah, I suppose
You've done musicals, you know, singing, plays, acting, comedy, magic. So you can judge most of what comes up.
Yeah, but you know, I'm just a blagger, really, Steve. You know.
Yeah, but you're blacking it really well, aren't you?
I've been blacking it for 40 years, but yeah, I'm still winging it, mate.
Yeah.
I'm still, as you said earlier, you're still learning every day.
Yeah. In the world of sort of past king rats as well, magicians have been king rats in the past. David Berglass, Paul Daniels. Did Paul Daniels mean much to you when you started in magic?
Yeah, very much so. Paul, for a start, once again I grew up watching him on the telly. I loved his show. John Fisher was very instrumental in getting me on the telly. Him and Michael Barrymore in the early days, and Cheryl Barrymore. And as you know, John Fisher was Paul's producer for many years, and Colin Edmonds, a great friend of mine, was a great writer, was Paul's writer for a long time as well.
Okay.
And I remember doing a gig once. It was for the Lady Ratlin's Ball, in actual fact, a long time ago. And I was on with Renee and Renato. Do you remember seeing
Yeah.
So,
did a cruise with him.
Oh, did you?
It was just him. He was dressed up as a chef. Actually, I was having dinner with Nina, and he jumped on the table, Royal Caribbean, and he just started singing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's done his own show as well. He was just trying to sell CDs throughout the cruise.
Yeah, it sounds like a nice show. Yeah, I was on the Water Ball, the Lady Water. I was on the Lady Ratlin's Ball with Renee and Renato. Paul and Debbie were in the audience, and I'd never met Paul before, so this is the first time I'd met him on the night. I was really nervous because he was in, you know, just for that alone. And I did my spot, and it went really well. I was really pleased with it, and as you know, the nature of my act, it's like a boot sale. And so everything was strewn all over the floor completely. It still is now, so I'm not a tidy act at all. And at the end of my act, I have to wait until everybody goes out and try and tidy up. It takes me about 20 minutes. And you let them calm down a bit before that, put the band on, all that sort of stuff. So I go to the dressing room, and after about 10 minutes, I said, I'm going to go and get my props off the stage now. I went, okay, great. And I opened the door, and there in front of me is Paul Daniels. And I was like that. And not only was it Paul Daniels had all of my props in his arms.
No.
He cleared the stage for me.
Oh.
It was my first meeting with him. I'm going to cry now. And he just stood in front of me, and he went, I know it's like working with props, they're a bloody nightmare. He said, I thought I'd give you a hand to clear the stage.
Oh.
And that was it. And I was like that. I didn't know what to say or what to do. And he came in, and we chatted for about half an hour. And he was just the most amazing man ever to me. He was brilliant.
That's incredible. I actually worked at Britannia Pier. We're now at Britannia Pier, Great Yarmouth. First time I met Paul and worked with him, and Debbie was here backstage. You know, we've done a lovely. It was the Great Yarmouth Magic IBM, I think, because it goes to Eastbourne and it comes here. And we were chatting after the show for about half hour. He was just talking to me about ventriloquists and. And he gave me his time, and then I'd done a tour with them for 6 weeks, and they were lovely.
That's what's important. That's what you want from is the time.
Yeah,
that's
just
what
chat.
You want is not don't anything else other than that time to
advice.
Advice, and also you soak it up. You in that when you're that age, even now, if you're with somebody that you really admire, I'm still like a sponge. You soak up the experience that they have.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the confidence they have as well is bizarre, isn't it? They lose that confidence, even though internally they're still, they've got like a swan with their feet underneath the water. But that outward confidence they exude is amazing.
It's nice that you see them as human, as you're talking. You think, they're just normal people. They're human, but they have got this. Power within their
but that's why they're successful. That's why
aspirations.
They're successful in the business because of that reason.
Ice and Teeth. In 2016, I had the pleasure of touring, as I've mentioned in this podcast many times, but touring with Paul Daniels himself and Debbie McGee. They were a delight. I remember doing the pantomime song at the end, If I Were Not Upon a Stage, and Debbie McGee was a boxer. She had 2 giant boxing gloves and would land me with a left hook quite heavy at times, and she did bang my nose a couple of times. I turned round just to check my nose weren't bleeding in one episode, and it was just a delight to share the stage with not only Debbie but Paul and the wonderful cast we had in that show, Alice in Wonderland, for Magic Bean Productions. Thank you, Jamie Wilson. On the very last show of that tour, I interviewed the whole cast of the show. Last but not least, we didn't have much time, hence I sound like I'm rushing. Paul and Debbie joined me on the couch in the green room for a little bit of banter. I can share that with you now.
Here we are, this is the last day. We're just about to do our last show in Alice in Wonderland, and I have had the time of my life. We're really sad, we are really sad. You said you can't wait to get home, Paul.
Oh, that's true, yes.
Sir Paul. Yes, Sir Paul.
I wish.
It's because he wants to get in his shed, Arthur. That's what it is.
Here we are. I want to get in the shed. I want to get in the trunk. Mr. Daniels.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Who is your inspiration? Yes.
Me, a book. No. I know. I didn't, until I was about 18, I didn't really think there were any other magicians in the world. I just read a book and learnt the trick, and I thought, ooh, that's cool. So I went to the library, got loads more, and I should take them back, really.
You should take them back. Yeah, you're going to get surcharged. I tell you, so you've invented many tricks of your own, and you've also built a lot of tricks and illusions.
Many.
That's why you had so many TV shows and royal variety performances.
Many.
What has been your highlight as Paul Daniels, your highlight?
Many. Marrying Debbie McGee.
Oh, that is wonderful.
Of course not.
Hello,
looking...
sweetheart.
Hello, Arthur. Yes, I'm not looking my normal self today, am I?
Well, no, you are the White Rabbit in
I am.
Alice in Wonderland. And it was wonderful because you had us on your BBC Berkshire radio show.
Yes, I did.
That was lovely as a guest just before we started this tour.
Yeah.
How have you enjoyed this tour?
Oh, I've had a great time. Yeah, it's a lovely show.
It's been a giggle, hasn't it?
Yeah, I didn't expect it to have so much music in it. And the music's been fabulous, and the live band,
live orchestra.
We've had lots of reviews that have said it's like a West End show, and that's what it feels like. So.
Yeah, and we've been touring it. It's just been a great experience, and also you're sharing Easter with like new friends.
Yeah,
It's true. Normally in this business, as you well know, you work by yourself. You know, you'll go out to a corporate job or an after dinner speech thing, and you're on your own. And then suddenly, wham along comes pantomime. This case and. It's a bit more than a panto, isn't it? It's a musical kind of play.
Comedy show.
With a bit of panto in the middle.
And magic. And it's great you get to do illusions. And little Harry as well, you get to use Harry.
Yeah,
Harry's a little white rabbit.
Oh, bless him. I just really, really enjoy thoroughly. On stage, there's been a lot of giggles, isn't there, Debbie McGee?
Yeah. Great so, yeah.
And after tonight, I'm not going to get hit by you, because Debbie McGee's got some boxing gloves, and I get a left hook and a right hook when I'm not expecting it. And I'm kind of not going to miss that bit, but it has been very funny.
This is multi-useful.
Oh, hypnotising stuff. What is your favourite joke? Just before we go, your favourite joke, Debbie McGee?
My favourite joke? My husband's.
Paul Daniels, your favourite joke?
Favourite joke, is there a B&Q in Henley, which is a posh place? Oh, no. There's an H and E, an N, an L, an E and a Y.
Yay! Oh, there's no B&Q in there. Well, it's been nice, been lovely being neighbours with you for the last couple of weeks as well.
Very nice.
It's been brilliant.
Yeah, he's a lovely guy. We've enjoyed working with.
Yeah, he's very nice.
Both of you.
Despite all the rumours, they're nice guys.
Yeah, well, we've really enjoyed it. That is my last interview for this section of Alice in Wonderland tour. Everyone's been brilliant. We've got top of the bills here, the beautiful Debbie McGee, the wonderful Paul Daniels. It has been an honour. I've been a fan for many, many years of both of you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
Bye.
We love you all. See you soon.
Bye.
See ya.
You should see Steve Hewlett. You like him. Not a lot, but you like him.
Ice and Teeth. You can find Debbie and her upcoming work on Chris Davis Management website. And finally, Debbie's sister Donna has a son called James Phelan. James is an award-winning magician. Yes, Paul Daniels' nephew is making waves touring the UK, sharing his magic gift. And he can be seen in his new show, The Dreamer, at the Magic Circle in London from June the 25th to the 27th. And you can also see James this year at Edinburgh Festival, The Dreamer, from August the 3rd. Paul Daniels inspired many magicians and performers in his time, not just with magic, but also with his infectious personality. He was a one-off, but his legacy lives on in magicians, Debbie McGee, his family, Showtown the Entertainment Museum in Blackpool, and the Grand Order of Water Rats. He came, he made an impact, and he disappeared. Now that's magic. Thank you, Paul. Clips in this episode were from YouTube, including theme tunes from Dealing with Daniels on BBC Radio, The Paul Daniels Magic Show on BBC Television, Whizbit, Every Second Counts, Wipeout, and clips of Shari Lewis, Ray Allen, and special guests Ronn Lucas, including his Row 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 Your Boat song on the Smother Brothers TV show. Thanks so much to Ron for guesting on this show, Debbie McGee on BBC Berkshire, Richard Griffin, Hayley Griffin, Nina Hewlett, Phil Hitchcock, John Fisher, Martin Daniels, and Joe Pasquale. Today's quote comes from Paul Daniels. I don't particularly have any magical ambitions, but then I never did. I just enjoyed the game. What a game it was. Eyes and Teeth is written, produced and hosted by Steve Hewlett, vocals by Lola, Larissa and Nina Hewlett. The Eyes and Teeth music and jingles are produced and performed by Kevin Dean. Join me on the very last episode of Eyes and Teeth. I, along with very special guests, will be paying tribute to the one and only Sir Ken Dodd. Brace yourself for a long episode.